But anyways, all right. Well, we can get started. And since Lauren's back,
I'm back.
woo, yay! I think what I want to hear about the most, even though the other two things are very interesting, I really want your take on the Joker. Because
Same.
Andrew and I have been kind of talking about it peripherally because we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Um, but we want to know about the disaster that is the Joker
Now
2.
you've both have seen the first one, right? That came out.
Yes, and love the first one.
How can
Absolutely
you
love the
not?
first one. Yeah.
It's gold, absolute gold. If you want really showcases great acting and specifically
Mhm.
Joaquin Phoenix, showcase humanity at its lowest, that's the film. In my opinion, it's one of the best portrayals of just how someone like the story of how someone became evil.
Mhm.
That's the film, personally. And the way he really just digs deep, you really feel, at least I felt, sorry for Arthur Fleck,
Yeah.
who he plays. That's the Joker's real name, right? And you
Yeah.
almost want to, I don't want to be like rally behind him, but you definitely are like, wow, this world is trash, and no wonder he feels this way. And of course, it turns into something greater. So beautiful film and how it ends and in just everything. And then they decide to make a second one. And they bring someone as well respected in Hollywood as Lady Gaga. If you've seen her in A Star is Born, you know this woman can act her butt off as well. So you think, match made in heaven, have her play Harley Quinn. Negative. What a joke. So, firstly, if you've seen the previews look awesome because you think, oh, Joker has been arrested. He's now in a mental institution. He's at Arkham Asylum. Cool. And he meets Harley Quinn, or Harley Quinn, excuse me, who, from my understanding, and since you gentlemen are the comic book experts, wasn't she supposed to be, or wasn't she a psychiatrist?
Yeah. Her original character was
Trail?
a therapist for Arkham Asylum. She worked with the Joker, fell in love with the Joker, went a little nuts, became the Harley Quinn we know today. And Harley Quinn was created for Batman the
Sure.
Animated Series back in the
Right.
90s.
90s. 90s.
92, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it dropped.
Yeah. So this takes a little different of a take because she is also a patient in that hospital. And as you come to find out, she's there because she commits herself, which is even more twisted. And she is someone who is quite bright and comes from a very privileged background on the Upper West Side and becomes obsessed with Arthur Fleck, specifically his persona of the Joker. And like others that follow him, she follows him, but to a different level. She follows him to Arkham to be also another patient there. So they meet, and you see this love story unravel. And it's almost unbelievable because you think, wow, he's really messed up. She's another level of messed up in terms of just how crazy she takes things. So much so that they blame her bad behavior on his influence when it's really, in many cases, she's more influential, well, negatively influential than he is. She wants him to be bad. She wants him to be even more evil than he actually is, which I think sort of coincides a little bit with like when I saw Suicide Squad, Margot
Mm.
Robbie's was very much so like a bad influence on the Joker played by what was it? Jared Leto.
Jared Leto. Yeah.
Yeah, because you see her telling him like, "Hey, drive faster," and just kind of like giving him like that nudge, like it's okay to be more, I guess, evil and whatnot. So that's interesting. But it's the musical piece that throws me off. This is not meant to be a musical. Fine, you sing one song together. We get it. You're a bonding thing. But it's almost like they use the fact that she has this powerful voice and then they just make it into a musical and it's just super bizarre and you don't know where they're taking it. And it's also his trial 2 years later after shooting Robert De Niro's character, and that's a pretty powerful ending from the first film. So it was almost like we didn't even need to go here. It would have been fine on its own as one film.
Hmm.
They decide to make this into like like way too much music of them singing and way too much of her and him having these fantasies of like how things would be. And ultimately, you just see what happens once he gets put through the court process and how messed up he is from going off meds and going on meds and just how she has a whole different vision of Joker and how he should be, and he's still sort of figuring out like what he wants to do. And other people were so inspired by what he did 2 years ago, they start he has like a whole fan base with those that are in the masks, and they're like, yeah, we need to cause havoc and like tear up Gotham. And he's just like, I'm just, going through this mental health crisis at Arkham, and he has like no plans to break out, nothing. He's just there. And it seems like everyone wants him to take over and make things more interesting in Gotham and to take it back for those that are underprivileged that have been wronged in the past. So he's got a fan in Harley Quinn, who is someone who is unexpected, who should not be a fan in him of him, given her background. And then all these other, I'll just say like followers that are so inspired by what he did, those that are just wearing masks in support and want him to be free once he goes through the court process and hopefully is, not found guilty. And I'll leave that, private so you guys can watch it on your own to see what happens. But I swear, if they make a third film, a huge mistake. I hope they don't. But I know
I don't think they will. I
I
think
don't think they will. It
Todd
did
Phillips is
so
done.
poorly. I don't know one person who was like, that was really great. Like, it was not great at all. Just horrible. And I'm a big musical person. I love musicals. This was not meant to be a musical. Fine, do one song together. Fine, I'm fine with that. But this was just ridiculous. It was almost like a mockery of the first one, really. It was so embarrassing.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I think when you write the Joker, um, the way that Harley Quinn became Harley Quinn is because he's so like psychotically charismatic. And I don't think Joaquin Phoenix's Joker was ever truly charismatic. He was
No,
crazy, but he didn't have charisma. Like he was a weak
no.
dude. And like to which worked. I mean, he was totally crazy, but the idea of him inciting a movement of some kind is kind of crazy. I mean, I can see the crazy people getting behind him losing his shit on TV and shooting somebody because you'd be
Right.
like, that's crazy, and whatever.
Yeah.
But like he was never going to be the guy to lead a movement. So
No.
yeah, it's interesting, and I think we talked a little bit about it before, but I think Todd Phillips like made this film literally to throw it in the face of the fandom a little bit, and I just like I can't fathom that. Like I can't understand that, especially when you really did make such a good first film.
Very much so. And it was different than I think what you would see of the Joker in the Batman films, right? It's a very different side. It's a dark side, but it's a dark side and where you get to learn his origins. Whereas this is just it's a circus, an absolute circus mockery. It's just, and it sucks because like freaking love Lady Gaga and I freaking love Joaquin Phoenix. Like, what great actors, and you put them in this shit show of if you can even call it a movie because it's just a joke. Don't see it. The joke of itself is the film. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. If you want to stream it, if you want to, again, if you want to do it, but it's embarrassing. It's not good. The first one was brilliant, and this was not. And I'm sorry I wasted my time. Sorry, guys.
To be fair, that was exactly the review I was looking for.
Okay, good.
Just because like I needed somebody to really that I knew to really confirm it. Like that's what
Yeah.
I've heard everywhere, right? Like that's the basic review is that this movie is not good, but like I wanted to hear from somebody that sat down and watched it. Um,
Yeah.
because it was panned like it bombed. I mean, this movie bombed on bombs.
Yeah.
Like it was like they dropped the Hiroshima bomb on top of the Nagasaki bomb. Like they're just like wipe it as it was horrible. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
when I first read reviews, I'm like, people are just so disappointed it wasn't as good as the first. And I was just, trying to give them a
Hmm.
benefit because people are just straight up haters in general. So if they don't like something as much as the first movie, they're gonna automatically shit on it. And for me, I walked out, I was like, yeah, they were really right on this. This was horrible. I went
Yeah,
with girls, not one of them liked it. There was nothing likable about it.
yeah, I was the same way. Like I was watching the reviews coming out, and I was like, is this, the negative, the critics, coming out to get their, piece of the pie because, negativity seems to get more play
Attention.
than positivity, right? So, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate, and just the more and more I saw, I was like, no, this can't be good. I'm still going to watch it when it streams somewhere for free. Like I still have like I have to see what this is about. Um, but I know it's not going to be good.
Yeah. And as someone who really appreciates musicals, this was so not it. So not it. It was
Yeah.
just, it was a
Yeah,
joke.
it was weird because at one point when they were coming out with it and they cast Gaga, they're like, it's not going to be a musical, and then they're like, well, it is going to be a musical, and they're like, but it's not really a musical, and I'm like, you guys need to figure your shit out. Like,
Well,
what
now
are you
that I
doing?
think about it, because like the film is called, how do you
Folie and
pronounce it?
Deux.
Folie
Folie
à
à
deux.
Deux,
Yeah.
which means what?
The
Second. I know "de" means two,
duh
but
means two,
Deux means
but
two,
it's
but what
like
is
the folly
Folie?
of two. It's like the
yeah,
not quite comedy of two, but like the um something along those lines.
madness shared by two. I just Googled it.
Okay.
What is
Shared
it?
madness.
Madness
Shared
shared.
madness.
Shared
Shared
Madness.
madness.
Okay, so I understand the name of it, but interestingly enough, too, Follies is the name of a musical.
Hmm.
And I think there's another musical called like something else with Folly. So I can see where they're going with that more now that I've seen it.
Yeah.
Because there are musicals with the word folly in it. And
I
it
think they're
is
Hmm.
talking about Casual Follies, which is the birdcage, actually. Actually, no, it's Casual Falls, actually. Talk
Raja
about
Falls, but there's also a
yeah.
musical called, I think, just
Yeah,
Folly,
there is follies. Yeah.
Follies, just
Yeah.
Follies. So there has to be some sort of intention with that
Mhm.
and making it a musical. There has to be two
Yeah.
musicals with that word in it. I don't know.
Yeah, the like I said, the more I read about uh Todd Phillips and
Todd
the way that he
Phillips.
dealt with this, I don't know that he did anything like intentionally enough. Like he just it was like he hated the audience and wanted them to know it. It's so weird. It's so bizarre.
But
It's
why
just like,
take something that is so great and do that?
well, the
That
first
got
is too, he made
Oscar,
the
but
first one, but
what?
then he just threw the second one in the dumpster. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
if you're gonna make garbage, just don't make it.
correct.
And
Spend your
then
money
Warner Brothers
elsewhere.
is probably sitting back thinking, "Damn, we wish we hadn't made this." That
Totally.
was, I mean, they lost 150 million or more on this, so it's
Yeah.
crazy, crazy.
Yep.
All right, well, I think going from crazy people in Arkham Asylum, we should continue with crazy people in Arkham Asylum and talk about the Penguin real quick because Andrew is finally on board with the Penguin, which I think is one of the better shows on TV this year, period. I think there will be some award show buzz for this show. I think Kristen Milioti is going to sneak in there. I think after the last episode, I think she's just absolutely killing it. And that's not to take anything away from Colin Farrell. That's not to take anything away from the young man that plays Vic, or anybody else in this. But she's doing something special right now with that role. And I I, I think it's an amazing show. But anyway, Andrew, you watched all four episodes this week, right?
I did.
Yeah. So what you got?
It is my favorite show of 2024, by far. I think that this has been a weak year, and it's like every episode is like a damn movie. Um,
Hmm.
and it's so good that I actually now, and I started it, but I want to go rewatch the Batman again. I don't think the Batman film is as good as this show, but I could be wrong, but it didn't strike me like this. I gotta start with like the main character. Colin Farrell, he's killing it. And it's not just prosthetics.
No.
He has completely disappeared into the role, number one.
Yeah.
But then number two, he's like humanized the penguin. It's nuts. I actually understand his motivations. I feel sincere, genuine peril for what he's going through. I mean, he definitely gets in some really tight spots in this show. And I'm the kind of person actually where, like, yes, I like to be taken on a ride, but when it's almost too perilous, it's almost like this is too much for me. Like some people like don't like feeling anxiety, right? And like so, for example, people talk about the bear and like the Thanksgiving episode, and it's like, oh, it's too much. I can't take it. I can take psychological peril. Physical peril, not so much. So for me, if it's like every episode you're almost getting killed for like how are you gonna get out of this one? That's what this show delivers. Now, when you're able to actually emote, shed tears, make expressions, show rage, show caring, show vulnerability, all through prosthetics, and not look anything like yourself and not
At all.
sound anything like
Mm-mm.
yourself, that is acting. So for me, the fact that he's already an Oscar winner, yeah, he's definitely getting the Emmy for this. I'm sorry. Like that's number one. And so I'm going to give everyone their fucking flowers on this. Apologies for the swearing, but I just have to. Okay. Next up, because I'm going to go in order of the kind of appearance. Renzi Feliz plays
Love that
this
kid.
Dominican Mexican kid that basically comes into the Penguin's life as like his surrogate like son. It's crazy because it starts off with him and his street gang kind of trying to like strip his car and he's shooting at them. Then he's like, don't run away. Like, I need you to help me like take care of this perilous situation. He does. He's then kind of like, all right, well, you're a witness. I got to kill you now. And he like begs for his life. And he's like, okay, I'll make you my driver. So he's definitely a bit hostage at first, but it's crazy how organically but believably they actually develop a bond. It's nuts. It's a bit Stockholmish, but it's nuts.
But
His
that's why, for me, is why that third episode was so good
dude,
because
that's
they
actually my
have
favorite
that
one.
moment. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. No, we're sorry. We're gonna wrap, okay? But I gotta say, like, dude, like his expressions, everything, like he is killing it in that role. And yes, episode three, believe it or not, is actually my favorite episode, just because even though it was a Victor-centric role, you still saw a lot of other things happening, even to the point that the next person I'm going to mention, like they are actually letting their guard down and starting to trust Penguin. And that is, of course, Kristen Milioti as Sophia Falcone. My God, okay? This actor, actress, whatever you want to say about it, has range. We first saw Kristen Milioti in an episode of Black Mirror called the USS Callister, where it's kind of a spoof of like Star Trek and also calling out toxic fandom or masculinity in like science fiction in the sci-fi world. Okay, that's what it was, and she killed it in that role. It's actually, I think that episode won an Emmy, and it was like, anyway, she's the shit. But she's always been this mousy kind of like unassuming kind of like lost in wonderland type actress. No. Sophia Falcone, while she starts off when you see her backstory in the fourth episode, no, she is scary. And from the moment she walks on screen, she's ice princess, she's calculating, she's cold, but you can tell there is an undercurrent of deep passion and emotion under there. And with such a small stature, to have that much screen presence to kind of steal every scene you're in, killing it. So that's why the fourth episode that you talked about is also, I think, going to be really award winning. So, anyways, I've been talking a lot just now, but I just want to say that I'm excited about this show. And the last thing I'll say for this opening salvo is like The Last of Us before it, you know, if your episode is so good that I actually want to watch the behind the scenes stuff and like actually understand like what was going on, like in terms of the producers and what they were thinking, that's how I know you know it's a good show, and they've done that. And I'll also take the time to say the show has a lot of women in the actual like it's a woman executive producer, a lot of women directors and writers, so it's a very kind of balanced perspective. So yeah, man, let's go back and forth. Let's play tennis with this.
Well, one thing that, yeah, that you just mentioned that I think is a big deal is those post-show kind of vignettes about what the episode was, what they were building towards, what the characters were doing, what they were thinking, because a lot of those things are things that you kind of feel under your skin. But then when they talk about them, like it kind of comes to the forefront of your mind. Like you pick up the things that you felt, but now you're hearing them kind of explain to you. And I think, yeah, they're doing a great job creating these characters, and I think they're working with emotions and things that I just feel like haven't been done with a character like this before. Like I look at what Sony has done with their villain verse and how they're just making action movies that don't make any sense. And DC said, you know what, let's take a villain that's been around but is never like outside of some really great comic book stories. He's not a particular intimidating villain, right? Like he's not physically imposing. He's not uh they never I don't know, they've never really portrayed him as like a genius. Like he's just not a character that I think has ever been really dug into, right? And finally they said, no, he's a mobster, which he's always been, but he's a mobster. And so they said, let's take this story, let's ground this story in like mob lore, right? So he's going through all the things that you've seen in other mob movies, right? And so you've got families, you've got all this stuff in the Gotham mob world, and he is a very, very imperfect character, like very imperfect. Like he's always thinking, he's always calculating, but he's not always doing it well. Like he gets himself into a lot of trouble. Like he's not your typical like comic book bad guy genius where everything he does is he's not playing 4D chess, right? Like he's playing chess and he is losing pieces along the way. Like he's not killing it.
Well, it's funny you say that because again, I had Myers-Briggs these motherfuckers. So basically, I see him as an ENTP, and what that means is that he's always like he's thinking laterally and he can think on his feet, right? Whereas
Mhm.
Kristen Milioti, I think, is an INFJ/INTJ because she actually does play chess. I think that,
Mhm.
what you see at the end of the fourth episode, I'm almost like, oh, Michael Kelly, you can't waste him. So the fact that you know, I'm like, good, because he's too damn good to be taken care of. Okay. But, seeing her, but anyway, so going back to him, I still think I agree, but like the jam he got out of, whether it was like the guy in the basement who was gonna like spill the beans, whether it was getting rid of the weapon, like, choosing who got the weapon, like, I do think that, he's even telling Vic, like, you got to think on your feet.
Yeah.
And then also, as far as him being an imperfect character, what I like is that guys like us, like the world wasn't built for guys like us. Like we're not gonna get anything. We have to take it, And
Mhm.
and the way he's saying that to Vic, and Vic is totally in that situation. I mean, he's from the poor area, his family's wiped out, he's an orphan. Like the idea of I think a lot of people do know what it's like to feel not listened to, small. And I think that's what even Sophia says, where she's like, well, at least you have a dick, so you have a chance. But I'm a woman in this crime world. No one takes me seriously. I'm even being gaslit. Like I mean, even the performances, because I'm just gonna gush again. Everyone, Mark Strong as our Carmine Falcone, I mean, he's killing it. As a matter of fact, I feel like the guy who played him in the movie is a bit
John
more,
Turturro.
yeah, John Turturro. To me, he's a bit more like comedic in a way and weaselly. Whereas
I
I
don't
feel
think
like
he plays it comedic in the Batman, but
no, he
generally
doesn't. He
speaking, he
doesn't.
is he is a
But
more
just
comedic actor.
but yeah, but exactly. But just his stature, like he's kind of skinnier and kind of
Hmm.
Weasley looking, whereas Mark Strong has a more draconian look to him. So I feel like he was cast well. I
Hmm.
mean, Michael Kelly he's good in everything. I mean, I
Yeah,
first saw him in
yeah,
House
he's
of
awesome.
Cards. He's the ultimate like number two, like who will just absolutely reptilianly like take care of shit. Like he is no joke. I mean, everyone's bringing their A game. Even like Michael Zegan as Alberto Falcone. He's just like this
Hmm.
privileged, spoiled a-hole. But you can kind of see why Sophia is so broken up over the fact that because when he like I forgot to mention even the mom, like when he tells the mom what he did. At first, I thought my mom was gonna be like, "Son, like, why would you do that?" But no, she was like, "That's my boy."
Right? Yeah.
And I was like, yo. So, man, I just think that this show is so gritty, so grounded, and it just feels like Game of Thrones level gravitas in
Hmm.
a comic book film that I have just not seen. And I think it's absolutely going to, as you said, kill it during award season. So for
Yeah.
everyone who hasn't seen it yet, the hype is real. See it. Clancy Brown, I mean,
I love Clancy Brown.
everything he
Um,
does is
Guys,
great.
I'm sold. I want to see
oh,
it.
you definitely like you've got to watch it. I mean, it's like if you took Game of Thrones, but you said, instead of focusing on 58 characters, we're going to focus on four. And we
Right.
are going to tighten up their story. We're going to keep all the drama, all the stuff, because like you said, Andrew, I think 3 and 4 are the best episodes for similar but different reasons. Like that whole exchange between Vic and the Penguin, or between Oz when
In
Vic
the
is like,
bathroom?
yeah, when Vic is
Yes.
like, I'm your prisoner, basically, and Oz is like, dude, what? Like there's a moment where this guy who is a bad guy, all he wants to do is make this kid's life better. He's just not good at it. Like he's not a father figure. Like he's kind of doing that thing, but he he's not like he doesn't have like the true emotional connection because this kid is so different. Like this kid is from a background where ideally, like in his world, he would do everything right, and his dad would be disappointed if he was doing anything less. Like he says, my dad would be disappointed in me for this,
Yes.
and
Correct.
Mhm.
but at the same time, like Oz knows, he's like, that's not the world you live in, kid. He's like, that'd
Correct.
be great if that's what it was, but that's not what you live in. And he's not a sensitive like dad type, but at the same time, like he wants to pick this kid up. I think he sees himself in
Correct.
this kid and wants to
100%. You got
wants to bring him
hot.
up.
You got hot, kid. It was very a Bronx Tale. If you ever saw that movie with like Chaz Palminteri and Robert
Hmm.
De Niro, it was that. And the thing is, like, I think in a way, like it was mind games because no, dude, like, sorry, you were held hostage
A little
because
bit,
he
yeah,
said,
yeah.
like, I gotta kill you now, in the first episode, and he was gonna do it. So it's like because you see too much. So no, he absolutely. So I feel like he was playing with, he was manipulating him,
Hmm.
But it wasn't just pure manipulation because you saw him at the bar, like he was hurt. Like he was lonely, and
Hmm.
the thing is, even Vic knows, and he's like, I think he's kind of lonely. Like they really do have a bond. So, but it was just so well done. I think Penguin's feelings were hurt. Like when he
Oh, for
said,
sure,
"What you
for
think
sure.
I'm keeping you hostage? You this whole time you think I'm holding a gun to your head, kid? No, I like you. I like hanging out with you, dude. That was some of the realest stuff ever. I will say though, I don't know if I was totally sold on why he changed his mind. I mean, I'm glad he did, and in a way because that would have kept the story going, and then he showed up at the right time. But like and I'm also a little sad that like Sophia finds out and I'm being light here. I'm not trying to be too spoilery, but I wanted to see more Sophia Penguin Bond because I felt like they had a
Yeah,
special thing too. But yeah, it's over now.
that bridge is burned.
But
Um,
anyways, yeah,
but
all
yeah,
right.
and then her episode was great because you see the full evolution of her character from, you know, mousy might be the wrong word for what she was at the beginning, but she was not tough. Like she wanted to be a philanthropist. She wanted to be, she wanted to give back. She wanted to be kind and she wanted to do all this stuff. She just was born into the wrong family. And so like she tried to fit into that family and then they were like, yeah, you don't fit in because you're a girl. And so she's got to deal with all that crap. And then when the time comes, who gets thrown under the bus?
Yeah.
She does. And what I think is great about that is that when you're watching the first couple of episodes, you believe she is this person that in fact she is not, right? And so on top of that, she kind of had to adopt that personality to survive.
Yes, she did.
And then that whole finale, the whole like last 5 minutes of episode 4, you're just like, this girl's badass. Like she is gonna run shit. Like I don't know where this season ends because like I, how do you have a world where Oz and Sophia come out of this alive and deal with each other for whatever the future of Gotham is, right? But at the same time, like I'm like, I know in the comics the Penguin is around always, so you can't really kill him off. So like, but I don't want Sophia to get killed off. Like she's an amazing character. Like I don't know, man.
Well, I've read the comics. Not the comics. I know a bit more. So they're definitely taking liberties with even Sophia in terms of
Oh,
her
for
as a
sure. Yeah.
character. But I mean, I will say there's 8 episodes planned. So that's how you
Hmm.
know it's quality over quantity. And as far as what I'll also say is like, yeah, this is GOT. So I feel like no one is safe. I mean,
Oh no, yeah.
except maybe the Penguin, but everybody else, yeah, none of them. I don't
Well,
think
and
anyone's safe.
the thing that I saw too that was really nice is that when you watch those behind the scenes stuff, the director of the Batman is directly involved in this
Oh yeah,
also.
Matt Reeves.
I didn't realize he
Yeah.
was as involved in
Yes.
this as he is. So I was like,
Yes.
okay, like they're really like I know this isn't part of Gunn's like larger
Oh, it's
uh
separate.
verse,
Like none.
but at the same time, like they are building their little pocket Batman
Or
verse
Bat. Correct.
that isn't corny. Like that's the thing is nothing is corny. And the other thing that will be interesting is if they bring back was it Zoe Kravitz that played Catwoman?
Yes.
She's Sophia's half sister.
Yeah.
So like they could bring her back in and I have not heard word one about that. Like I don't know if that's happening, but it'd be cool if it did, but it would be very interesting if they did.
Well, I mean, I just have to say really quick, I almost texted the group, but I was like, "This is too much, Andrew." But Jules Pierre Malice even in this, like as far as like
Uh-huh.
the guy
Hmm.
from both Lost and
Yep.
The Expanse, I'm like, yes. Actually, it's two people that bring Expanse. It's Avi Shoresh,
Oh, I
Ashkadulu,
love her.
Gashlu.
Yeah.
Sure. Anyway,
Sure, Agdashlu, yeah.
yeah, she's in it too. Like, yo, like this. Yeah, I think that no, they've got a live one here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. That's all I got. It
Yep.
is.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be talking about the show to people that skipped it for whatever reason because it looked like a comic book show or wasn't what it doesn't matter what you think it is or what you're expecting, just watch it because it is incredible. It's a crime drama. It's a human drama. It is, everything in between. Strong female lead, strong male lead, like strong black Latino lead, like everything. And that kid is great. He was in a
Yes.
show called The Runaways, which was based on the Runaways Marvel comic back when Marvel TV was still trying to figure itself out. And so it aired on ABC Family. I talked about this in one of the other episodes, but it aired on ABC Family. And dude, that show was actually pretty solid for a show about a bunch of kids. Because the plot of that show is these are the children of Marvel villains, not necessarily the biggest Marvel villains, but people that are bad in the Marvel universe and they don't want to be. And so they see their parents do something awful and they effectively run away. And that's why it's called The Runaways. And they live on their own and they do all this stuff. And it was a well-made show for what it was at the time, and it's kind of a bummer that it doesn't still exist somewhere in the Marvel universe. Um, but yeah, it was good. He was really good in that, so it's nice to see him break out here because this one you have to see him now. Like you can't look past the show he's in. This show is a big deal.
Hmm.
He is a major part of this show. He is doing great in it. This is a moment for him. So I'm really excited to see that for him.
Word.
And I am now pretty enticed to get my HBO Max back up and running for this alone. And
Yeah,
when Andrew said this is the best show he's seen this year, that's like, and Andrew, like doesn't say stuff like that unless he truly means it.
well, yeah, and I watched the first couple of episodes and I was like, okay, this is good. This is good. Like I knew it
Right.
was good. And then when episode 3 dropped, I was like, no, this is legit. And then episode 4 was just, was more of the same. So you're like,
Yeah.
this
Andrew,
is
I
a
haven't
good show.
heard you talk so highly about a series since Beef
Wow. Yeah, and then Beef was my favorite
of
show.
last year.
23. Good memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
This is legit. I'm not missing a
Yeah.
second of
I
this.
want to see it because it
Yeah,
sounds like
yeah.
more than just like, I'll say it, a DC comic type of thing. It sounds like
It's
it's more.
not even, yeah, it doesn't even have
It
really
doesn't
comic
feel
book
like it at all.
elements.
Like
Well,
there
that's
is
sort of how I felt with the first Joker film. You don't need to
Mhm.
be a
Yes.
comic person. It's about the emotion behind it and just really seeing good acting.
Yeah, it does help to have seen the Batman at some point when watching the Penguin because there are some events that are related,
Big time.
but
Right. Which I
it
have
is
seen.
not.
Oh,
Yeah,
you've seen
so
it. Then
you're
you're
good.
good.
If you've seen it once, you're good.
I'll
Like
probably
you
rewatch
know.
it just because I haven't seen it since, because that didn't even come into theaters. I saw this like when it went to streaming, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
did too.
but I would say nah. Like I would just say start with Penguin and then go back to
Yeah,
the movie because I think I
Really?
yes,
Okay.
because I started the movie and again it's slower. Like it
yeah,
definitely
Sure.
it
yeah,
didn't grab me the same way Penguin did. So it's crazy to me that like a TV show is better than the movie, but I think that's what's going to happen. And by
Right.
hopefully the TV show makes the Batman 2 a better movie.
Right.
yeah.
Well, he wasn't in it that long, though.
No, not
He
at all. Not at all. He was such a minor
Which is
character in the
crazy,
Batman.
right? But you make a whole
Um,
series out of them?
well,
Genius.
and like legitimately every episode is a bit of a movie. Like
That's
they're over an
becoming
hour
sort
long
of a
each.
thing. Like what is it? The Agatha show you were talking about a
Yep.
couple episodes. Like she was a minor character, I believe, from what you said from the WandaVision, right?
She was more than a minor character, but she didn't come into play until later in that.
Yeah,
Um,
but these spin-off character, their own narratives, I think this
yeah.
is becoming more popular.
Yeah, I think it's good. It was funny too that Andrew that you brought up Colin Farrell the way you did because that was like probably my first comment about the show is like he is completely lost in this role. Like this is not Colin Farrell like at all. Like it's not. Like this is Oz. This is the Penguin.
When
Like
you see him talking in the little after thing, he's like got the Irish accent and he's
yeah, he's
actually
back to being old
getting
Colin
skinny
Farrell and you're
again.
like, "What?"
What? It's weird.
Yeah, it's a trip. You're like, that's just not that guy. Well, and especially like if you watch the Batman when he shows up, everybody was joking that it should have been Richard Kind, who looks exactly like that character. And you're like, yeah, but Richard Kind is a comedian, like he does small comedic parts.
Right.
But it's just funny because like that's exactly who he looks like. And you took this like Colin Farrell's a handsome son of a bitch. Like
Yeah,
he
he
is
was him and
charming and good
Brad Pitt
looking
were
and
like in the same league
yeah,
like back in like the 20 years ago. He was like the next hunk or whatever.
yeah.
Even forgot to mention even the walk, man. The walk.
Oh, dude, so
The
good.
way he walks. That's why they call him Penguin because he
Yeah.
kind of waddles, but it's so
Well, they
well.
show his
Those
brace in the
feet.
first episode, I think, so you kind of
Yeah, they
can
do.
tell. Yeah.
And it's gnarly. Like how his feet are all jacked up.
Yeah.
He's definitely like he's just a guy who's deformed and who's just learned how to live by his wits. But
Hmm.
it's that is where did you get that, Colin? You how like yeah, how like because when you're an actor, you have to be able to pull that from something. So where are you pulling that from? You're talented, man.
Maybe he was in the IRA, man.
I'm thinking he worked in those tanks with too many penguins.
There you go. Yeah.
Just kidding.
I know.
I need to study with them and go to an aquarium for like a week. Who knows?
Watch how they walk. Yeah.
Watch how they walk.
Yeah.
That's so
So,
funny. Yeah, I definitely have to see that. Yeah.
yeah.
I hope we didn't hype it for you though.
What?
I hope we didn't overhype it for you.
I
No,
feel like
no,
you can't. Like,
very
because
rarely have you guys told me something is like great and I'm like, this sucks. Like I never really think that.
but I almost feel like if you talk about it the way that we talked about it, people are like, okay, maybe it's okay. Like you just kind of don't buy that it's as good as we're saying it is, and then you watch it and you're like, okay, because I told you how good it was, Andrew, and you were like, okay, yeah, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, no,
But I have
whatever, and
coworkers
then
who also told me, and like, they're not as into pulling back the layers as we are when it comes to talking about different shows and films. And then reading some reviews, it looks fantastic. And just in theory, the idea is genius. Let's take this minor character who's kind of been almost like part of the background. He's an evil villain in the comic books, but let's talk about his origins, his story, and why he is the way he is. It's great
yeah,
in theory.
yeah, I'm actually really curious to see if it gets a second season or what they're going to do with him after this. Because I'm kind of okay with if they tell a great story, just
Mhm.
stop it at one season. I'm okay with that. Like um that's what made WandaVision work. I think that's what makes Agatha All Along work is that they are one season stories, and that's cool.
Yeah,
I enjoy Agatha. I think the season's been really good. It is does not compare to the Penguin though. You're talking apples and oranges. I mean,
right. One's
Agatha All Along
magic.
is
Yeah.
definitely a comic book movie or a
Oh,
comic book show. This is a crime show. This is a mob and people show.
Someone said this is The Sopranos all over again, and I didn't actually watch The Sopranos. Like I watched the first season, so I know there's
Mhm.
a lot more I haven't seen. But even that, I mean, almost feel like it's a little bit like, nah, man, give it its own thing. But maybe it is Tony Soprano. I get it. I don't know. But I just see it as a fleshed out, very well fleshed out, amazing
Mhm.
character crime drama.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just deeper. It's great. They did an amazing job on it. So, all right. Well, maybe we can then turn the tide a little bit here. We'll let Lauren talk about, it sounds wrong, but she can talk about My Old Ass, which is a movie and not my own old ass.
Saw it yesterday. It's been out for almost a month, if not a full month at this point. Film with Aubrey Plaza that I saw previews for over the course of the summer and was on my radar. And then I was looking at reviews, and this film got over a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. It looks like 92. And after doing a little bit of research and reading a little bit more on Wikipedia, I thought, why not? So I saw it with a friend of mine in my neighborhood, and it's an interesting story. It's a film about a young girl who's 18, who's in a transitional period where she's going to be going to college soon, and it's the summer before. And she hangs out with two of her friends, and they're from this kind of rural area. Her father is a cranberry farmer, and they live on a cranberry farm. And this girl and her two girlfriends decide, let's like make the most of the summer and let's get high and do some mushrooms in the woods. And they all have very different reactions. One's dancing, one kind of just falls asleep, and then the main character Elliot, young Elliot, um, who is played by this actress named Maisie Stella, who I've never seen before. She ends up meeting her older self at 39. So she's 18, older self 39 is played by Aubrey Plaza, who plays the older version of Elliot. And they start chatting about what life's going to be like at that point, almost 20 years later. And she's kind of disappointed by Aubrey's appearance and just how sad her demeanor is. And it's only, a couple hours that she's currently in this high and is tripping on mushrooms. And they just lay together in this tent, and she just gives her a piece of advice. Yeah, I mean, you're not married, but you're a PhD student, and just spend more time with your family and ensure that you're making the most of your time with your siblings. She's got two younger brothers and mom and dad. Make sure to see them more and spend more quality time with them, but also try to avoid a guy named Chad. And then it leads into the next morning. She wakes up from this trip, and her girlfriend share their experiences. And she's like, I met my older self. It's kind of weird. And then a couple days later, she's working on her dad's farm, and she ends up in, I don't know if it's a river, a lake, whatever it may be. And this good looking guy shows up, and it's Chad. And immediately she's spooked out. She's like, oh, I don't want to be around you, things like that. And then she goes back home and she realizes that she's got a new contact in her phone called My Old Ass. And it ends up being Aubrey Plaza, her older self, and she communicates with Aubrey Plaza about her feelings and what's going on and how she met Chad. And she's like, yep, you don't want to be around Chad. And then over time throughout the film, because this is over the span of maybe a few weeks before she goes to college. She only has, I think she said like at the beginning of the film, like 22 days left till she leaves to go to University of Toronto. You find out that Chad is very much so going to be in this picture the rest of the summer, and there's no way to avoid him. And she's curious, like, why older Elliot is saying to be away from him. He seems harmless, he's kind, he's generous. And side note, up until this point, younger Elliot thought she was gay. You see her make out with another girl, and all of a sudden she's having feelings for a guy, and she's like, "Am I bi? Is this normal?" And she's questioning her sexuality, and it's just a really beautiful film where you get to see someone fall in love, and you. I'm gonna spoil it. Sorry, guys. Um, is that okay?
Mhm.
You're like, yeah, whatever. It's not one that I'd be like, Andrew's gonna be so sad. He has to see this film. But it's really cute. And you come to find that she falls in love with this guy. He ends up living in Toronto and attending University of Toronto, where she's going to be going the next couple of months. And she finally runs into Aubrey Plaza again later in the film, and she's like, I don't understand. Like, I've been intimate with this guy. She's like, I told you not to fall in love with him, but why can't I? And she said, because he's going to die and you're going to be heartbroken. And, when you find this out, I don't think there was like a dry eye in the audience, because you really felt that. And I feel like, look, we've all experienced love at some point in our life, and looking back, and if you've lost a loved one, would you have told that person, hey, your younger self, don't meet that person? Because maybe some of your best memories were with that person, and who you've become years later is because of that person. And Aubrey Plaza, older Elliot, ends up realizing, like, no, you just got to live in the moment and enjoy every step, because there's going to be an ending to every chapter at some point in life, and we can't just live life in fear and in sadness. We have to look forward to experiencing new people coming in and out of our lives. And she then embraces a younger Elliot to continue this relationship with Chad, and you leave it off with older Elliot hugging Chad, he not knowing who she is because he never gets to meet that older version. But it's very sweet, and you see her cry because that was someone that clearly meant a lot to her. And yeah, it's one of the, it goes back to the saying, it's like, it's better to, lost love and be in love than never loved at all. So I think that film really holds true to that. And it's just a very interesting concept, because what if we were to encounter our younger self or our older self? What words of wisdom would we experience? So I think in that sense, the film was just so well done. It was beautiful and evoked a lot of emotions in me, and I think my friend as well. It was very good acting, and yeah, I do recommend it.
Yeah, I've heard good things. Nothing about the story. So what you just said was by far more than I knew about it. But I just love Aubrey Plaza. But it sounds like she maybe is a more mellow Aubrey Plaza than we're used to, because she's usually pretty crazy.
She's funny. She's funny in this.
Yeah,
Like, she makes jokes about just like, oh, you're just like young and stupid now. Wait until you're older, and just very sarcastic and dull, a bit of a curmudgeon to some extent, in the brief, like, I guess, first part of the movie. And then you just hear phone conversations between my old ass and younger Elliot, right? And then she shows up at the end, and she comes to the realization, like, you can't just run away and block out hurt in the future. You have to experience life and feel that hurt sometimes,
yeah,
and not
yeah,
have regrets either. So I think that was the whole thing she was trying to avoid younger Elliot experiencing by saying, don't hang out with this Chad. And she's thinking, is this guy like a mass murderer? He wants to hang out with her. And it's just funny. Obviously, looking back, and I knew it, like, when she said that, I'm like, this is probably someone she's going to fall in love with, and something happens. Like, why would she say, don't meet a guy named Chad? Clearly, she's still alive. He didn't murder her. Yeah, it's odd. So I had a feeling that was going to be the case, but apparently he dies, like, down the line. And yeah, so I think she was just trying to have her avoid that pain a second time.
yeah, yeah. I'll probably catch it when it streams, because I think see, it released in September. Wow, it released in September 13th.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would think it's going to be on digital here pretty soon, and then streaming somewhere within a month of that. So
Yeah. So
I'll
good.
uh, I'll
Yeah.
catch it when that comes out. So
Heartfelt, funny. Yeah, it's so good. Maddie Ziegler's in it. If you watch Dance Moms like I did back in the day,
no.
she plays one of her friends.
All right. Well, speaking of wholesome movies, I just watched Alien Romulus today. For the first time. It was in theaters not too long ago. Just came out on digital this week. Um, and so I sat down with my two of my kids and watched it because we watched the other Alien movies together, the first two Alien movies together, earlier this year. And you know, I enjoyed it. It was an interesting story. I would have to look. I don't know how much younger Kaylee Spaney is in this than Sigourney Weaver was in the original Alien. Um, because like at first I was like, this almost feels like the Goonies of the Alien universe. Like these kids are all kind of young, but I mean, I think they're all in their 20s, so they're not quite teenagers, right? We're not looking at these, dumb punks. But the way the story kicks off is that these, yeah, I'm still going to call them kids. They're still young. Are living on this planet where they're mining and basically they owe X amount of their life to this mining company and they can't leave until they've successfully turned in all their hours. And so this girl who has lost her father seemingly relatively recently, um, she thinks she's covered her hours. She's ready to leave. And her father reprogrammed an android for her to. At one point, they kind of refer to the android as her brother, even though it's an android, right? So they have a very close bond, and she tries to basically go cash in her chip. She wants to get out. And they're like, yeah, you know what? We just changed the quota. You're totally screwed for another, like, I think they said like 5 to 7 years or something like that. And you're just like, damn, dude, like what? And so she's stuck. And so her friends come to her and they're like, hey, we found this thing in orbit that nobody has noticed yet. We're going to go try and raid it, take everything that's valuable of it and run. Because if we can get to somewhere that we can sell this stuff, we can just be free of this whole situation. And, knowing that this is a movie in the Alien universe, this is a terrible idea. Like, where this is going to go. But they do it anyway. So they go up there and then, chaos ensues. I mean, at this point, you have an Alien movie. Now, what is great about this, though, is the performances of I mean, I think everybody does a good job, but I think the three big performances are Kaylee Spaney as our main character, whose name I forgot off the top of my head.
It says
Uh,
Rain.
okay, yeah, Rain, and then Andy, who's the android, which is funny because Android and Andy are the same, but the model number is also ND whatever. So like you can get his name from either one of those. Um, but he starts off as kind of like this malfunctioning kind of sweet but damaged like dude. Like he doesn't get that people don't like him. He doesn't get that, anything else. Like her dad programmed him to be a companion. And so like he walks around and tells dad jokes all the time because that's, what keeps her happy. And she genuinely loves this character, like this android. And what she doesn't tell him is when they get up to this what ultimately turns out to be a space station, when they get to this place to kind of raid it and get stuff, we find out that she didn't tell him, the android, that he can't go with them where they're going. So they're going to go far away. Where they're going, they don't like androids. So if they take him there, he'll end up getting destroyed or they'll not let them in anyways. And so like that's kind of like a heartbreaking moment because you're like, this character that you like this android character is very likable, arguably more likable than Kaylee Spaney's character, who's also likable. Um, he's just gonna get totally screwed over, and he just has to be okay with it because he's an android. And then there's another kid that's on this thing that is a total dick to him because a hardcore android made a choice that cost him his part of his family or all of his family, because it had to make the hard choice between trying to save this person, letting more people die, or just saying X amount of casualties is okay as long as we save the rest of the people. And so this kid kind of blames all androids for this and is a total shit to Andy. Um, but along the way, they find a bunch of the original face huggers. Everything goes to shit. They find an android very much like the android from the first movie, with the same kind of programming and attitude. And at some point, they put a chip in Andy that all of a sudden starts to convert him to a much more dickish robot. Like now he's got effectively a prime directive. He's got a job to do, and he doesn't really care about the people as much anymore, even though that's who he used to be. Now, this is the one plot hole that my son pointed out that I kind of agree with is like, once he had that directive, why did he bother to save people at all? Like, and he got a hold of the stuff he was supposed to save. There was a ship that could take him off. If the only thing that our kind of dickish android, original android, cared about was getting this thing off so they could study it more, I'm not sure that they would have left any people alive in the first place. Like, I feel like where he was at in that story, he would have taken that bottle of goo, got on the ship, left the people behind, and taken it um and turned it over to whoever needed to continue to work on it. So like that was a bit of a plot hole to me, but okay, fine. They didn't do that. Maybe there's some lingering bit of Andy in there. You can kind of hold on to that. Um, and then the story kind of goes back and forth. You have your emotional moments back and forth. Her very good friend is pregnant, so that becomes kind of an anchor for the story. And that character is also really great. I think she doesn't get enough screen time, but we're going to see her a ton in The Last of Us season 2 and season 3. So I'm excited to see that. But the other thing that was kind of a bummer was just kind of where it ended. Yeah, like I'm okay with it ending open ended, but it ended up like you have no idea what's going to happen to these people at all. The only thing that is moderately comforting is it doesn't seem like they have any more aliens for them to deal with. But with all this stuff going on and the way the alien universe has been built over time, they are kind of I guess a plot hole. I mean, it's only her and the android, but they're a bit of a plot hole because they know about the xenomorphs now. So when they get where they're going, would they not tell anybody about it, or would they just run off and be happy? I don't know. Um, so it's a little open ended there at the end, but I mean, it's a good movie. The special effects are great. I think Fede Alvarez, um, I think a lot of his effects were practical, like the original. Like I think that was his goal to keep it looking as real as you could. I mean, there's obviously some CGI stuff in there. There's some stuff that you can't do practically. Um, but like he made it look really good. I actually just saw something today, like as we were talking actually, on December 3rd, they're going to put out a special edition VHS version of this movie, which is wild because like why would you do that? Nobody has a VHS player anywhere, but they're going to put it out on VHS, so I think that's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I mean Andrew, you said there were people out there that didn't like this movie a bunch, but it was over a 7 on IMDb, so it did pretty well. I didn't look it up on Rotten Tomatoes yet, but I thought it did pretty well. But even my kids were like, "Yeah, I thought people didn't like this movie," and I was like, "I hadn't heard that. Like most of the reviews that I had heard were pretty positive, and I felt pretty positive about it. Like it was, to me, at least from the ones that I've seen, one of the better Alien movies." So
1,000%. The budget was only 80 million and it did 350. And as far as the people I mean, I only know two people who didn't like it. And um, one of them, I just actually, you know what? Even for both of them, I would say I don't really understand that, but it's okay. We'll just agree to disagree on that. Yeah, I loved it. I went in a little jaded just because I haven't seen any movies besides Alien 1 and Aliens, the second one. that I think lived up to the standard. Alien 3 was a bit underwhelming and definitely a downer. Alien 4 was, I think, almost a comedy, actually. But it was also violent as hell, but it was cool seeing uh what's her name? I keep calling her Klepto. But she was in Beetlejuice, she was in Winona
Winona
Ryder.
Ryder. Yeah.
Thank you. And then of course we talked about Prometheus being a letdown, and then the other one, Covenant,
Covenant.
also being let down. So I was like, okay, Andrew, like, but then everyone, the buzz for this movie was crazy. So I finally went and saw it, and it exceeded expectations. It was the action was great. I felt like the peril that you like, even though it's a bad idea for a bunch of kids to go up to a space station to try to like find the cryo chambers. It's like they wanted those cryo chambers because you need cryo chambers to survive a long journey in space.
Mhm.
But I think what happened was, or I think something was wrong with the cryo chambers, or they needed the android ultimately to get into the computer system. But then
Mhm.
they, again, you said they come across the alien eggs, and then stuff it ensues. And it turns into like a legit, it has elements from the, especially the first two films, because between the fact that you were on this dark ass ship and there's like aliens like killing people left and right, like one by one, taking them off, or the alien carries you off, then you're in this hallway and you're being incubated. Like, dude, that's from Alien 2, the acid blood. And then like the movie ends at a certain, like the movie gets to a certain place and you think it's over, and it's like
Mhm.
not over. And I'm not gonna spoil that either. But it's just like even that extra part for me was like that was from like Alien 4. And it's just like, man, like the fact that these corporate people, because this is Wayland Yutani. These
Mhm.
corporate people would care more about understanding these aliens and weaponizing them than like human life. While it seems so evil, I don't know, man. Like I feel like I think corporations have always been the target of science fiction, especially in the 80s. Because when you
Yeah.
even look at OCP from the RoboCop series,
Yep.
same
Yep.
thing. So anyhow, I just thought they did an amazing job. I think Haley Spaney also goes from kind of a cuddly character to a badass by the end, which is
Mhm.
the same thing that Sigourney Weaver did as Ripley. Even when she pulls out the gun, starts using it, like,
Yeah.
yo, like, yeah. And I just, yeah, I say for everyone who, I think the only alien movies you need to see, the must sees are Aliens, this one, and then if you want to be a completist, then see Alien 3. That's it. That's all you need to see. You don't need to see Prometheus, you don't need to see Covenant, but then probably Prometheus next. So I guess Covenant to me is like the lowest. No, Covenant and 4 are the ones that you can actually just like leave alone. Um, but man, this felt the most like the original series. So
Are
yeah,
there
definitely good.
any patterns or like repeat characters in any of these films or no?
As
Sort
a
of
matter of
in this
fact,
one. Well, in the story as a whole, yes.
yeah,
Ripley is in. Is she in the first three?
she's in the first three, and
Yeah.
actually she's in the first, as a character, she's in the first three, but she's arguably in the fourth one too.
Okay.
Arguably. But
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver is in all four movies.
Or
But then even in this one, I would say that there is like, you see, this one takes place actually between Alien and Aliens. So
Yep.
you could actually see Alien, which is the original, then this one, and then see Aliens. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
And this is probably the truest like horror film out of all three. Like you
Yeah.
could argue that the first one was mostly sci-fi. Like it definitely like it was a horror film, but it was also very sci-fi. This is a horror film. Like this is monsters are coming at you. They're coming at you fast. And Fede Alvarez is known for that. Like he's a horror director. He was the right guy for this job, and he did a great job with it. Um, and I think the one thing that you would miss if you hadn't seen Prometheus is the look of the monster at the end. because that
Right.
carries over
From
directly from
Prometheus.
Prometheus. Yeah,
Good point.
which is interesting because now you're seeing like how this whole bloodline, came to be. And Prometheus isn't, like you said, isn't worth a lot, but there are little strings in there um that tie some things loosely together. Like you don't need it, but it helps a little. Um I think yeah, it was interesting to see that bit in there. That monster at the end was gross, man. There's some weird stuff about that monster. And then the whole like creation of that monster or the birth of that monster, my kids were like, gross. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty gross, man. But yeah, it was good. Um yeah, I almost feel like what's the order of the movies? Like, if you were to do it chronologically, it would be Prometheus, then Covenant, then Alien, then
And
then
this one,
then
Romulus,
Romulus,
then
then
Alien,
Aliens,
then
and
3,
then
then 4.
four. Okay. Um, yeah, if you don't mind watching some stuff that doesn't work, you could watch it in chronological order because there are bits and pieces in there. And I feel like if you weren't familiar with the series and you watched it that way, you'd be less angry about it because people were definitely disappointed in the xenomorphs that showed up at the end of Prometheus,
Oh
because
yeah.
they didn't feel the same, but like they were like subject one out of like the longer lineage. So I think if you didn't know better, you wouldn't dislike it as much. Because
True.
that's what I said to you in pre-show. Like when I watched Prometheus, I had forgotten a lot about Alien by at that point because I hadn't rewatched Alien since I was very young.
Mhm.
And so like I wasn't so married to the storyline and the things that happened and so tight on that stuff. So it didn't drive me as crazy. Like it was still a problematic movie as a movie, but it was okay. Like I didn't hate it. But I can totally see where somebody that, is a hardcore fan, you wouldn't love it.
The other thing is like I feel like what made Alien and Aliens work was you actually had characters besides Ripley who you kind of somewhat latched on to. Like, whereas I feel like in Prometheus, I didn't like anybody.
No.
In Covenant, I didn't like anybody. In this movie, like you actually do like people. So
Yeah.
when you see them go, it's like, damn, that sucks. And yeah, you only know them for like, 30
2
minutes or
hours, yeah.
whatever. Yeah, but it's like it's still like you feel bad for mommy woman. You feel bad for like older brother. You feel bad for a fucking android. Like
Yeah.
it's so that's what this movie figured out. You got to make characters who matter. And I think again, because I jump around, that's what makes Penguin so damn good. The
Yes.
characters matter.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, yeah, speaking in Pego, like those characters are people. Like they're not just characters on a page. Like you are invested in them as human beings. And yeah, like maybe obviously this movie isn't quite that impactful, but the guy, I can't tell if he's a love interest or exactly what he was
Right?
overall,
Yes.
but like you care about him. Like he's a nice
Yes.
guy. Like you like him. Kaylee Spadey, you really like Andy. Even when he breaks bad, you're like, come back to the light, Andy. Come back to us. You're like, you can't go out. Like you care about Andy. You care about the girl with the baby, Kay. Her name is Kay. Like you care about her. And the other kid is Bjorn. I mean,
Yes.
just his name makes me want to punch him in the nose. So, like, he kind of sucks, and then the other android sucks, but that's okay. But they develop those characters enough that you don't like them as much as you like the other characters. Like that still works. They are not quite antagonists, but they're close enough. Like there was definitely parts where me and my kids were watching Bjorn and we're like, God, I hope he's the first one to die. Like just
But even though he was a dick, like when you see it in the water and he's just there, like like
yeah,
like
yeah, a very Jaws moment, right? Like yeah, but it works. Like it's good. Like if you're a fan of horror and you're a fan of the Alien films at all, this one's definitely worth a watch. All right, well then we only got a couple things left, but Lauren, you're going to take us to Broadway. Tell us about Suffs, which just sounds like such the weird name, until you pointed out that it's about women's suffrage,
Yeah,
and that
it's
makes a
like
lot more sense.
makes
But
sense. Wild.
yeah,
I know. Give my regards to Broadway. Does it go? No, no. There we go. There we go. You see it? Playbill.
yes,
Eh.
yes.
Okay, this is 2024, just in time to be qualified for the Tonys.
Hmm.
It was written by Shayna Taub, who is the playwright, wrote the book. She's also been responsible for writing different, I guess, lyrics to pretty well-known shows nowadays. Devil Wears Prada. They're making that into a show, so we'll see how that goes. But she's in her late 30s. She plays the main character of Alice Paul, and this show tells the tale of the women's suffragist movement pretty much from like I'd say like 1912, 13 to the early 1920s up until the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gives at least all white women the right to vote to start. So to be honest with you, I didn't have like much background on suffragists in Anthony and some of like the earlier um but you don't really learn as much about like you learn there's a 19th Amendment, yay, everyone well, women now can vote, but you don't really know the story behind it. So this musical explores that. It's produced by Hillary Clinton and Malala, which is pretty cool. So I know it got a lot of notoriety because of it. And it did receive a few Tony Awards for, I believe, Best Score and
Hmm.
Musical Book. But it does go through the story of just start to finish over the years. And particularly when Woodrow Wilson was president. And if you guys recall in high school, Woodrow Wilson was a pretty popular president for the decisions he made during World War One. So seeing him talking about more domestic related affairs, this actually sheds a pretty negative light on Woodrow Wilson and how he was trying to steer away from acknowledging, like he acknowledged that there was a group and they're referred to as the National American Woman Suffragist or Suffrage Association, which you see at the beginning of the show. But Alice Paul like kicks it up into gear because she notices that this movement, they're just showing up, but they're not really given the respect that they deserve. So Alice Paul takes a more aggressive approach and she marches and she brings some younger women. It's almost like old regime versus new regime. The old regime of the women are like, let's just, rub elbows with the president and let him acknowledge us, but not actually get anything done. And Alice Paul is like, nah, screw this. We're getting stuff done. And I don't care if this means us making old and new regime and how these women march in DC. And there's music in it. It's a musical. I'll be honest with you, there are no bangers. There's nothing where I'm like, this is such a memorable song. It wasn't, honestly. It's just the telling of this very powerful and influential movement. And let's throw in some music. So, to be honest with you, I think it would have been fine as just a play. Doesn't need music, but they put it in there. There's definitely a lot of comedic moments. They incorporate a very diverse cast. It's an all-female cast. They have a few cast members that play African American women that are going through their own movements as well, tied with the women's suffrage movement. And you see sort of the trials and tribulations that these Black women are going through because they're also trying to get equal rights being Black as well as going back and trying to get equal rights as women as well. So they did a really good job with casting. Apparently, a lot of the original cast or the cast in the Broadway show was the initial cast when it was off Broadway in 2022. But overall, it was fascinating. I like the historical piece of it. Would I recommend it to everyone and anyone? No. And I think there's a reason why it's closing in a few months. It's I expected to be more like Six the Musical, which tells the tale of Henry VIII and his six wives, which I was like very poppy, up and going, and everyone's clapping, and it's fun, and you learn history through song. This was not it for me. I didn't learn history really through song as much. I was finding myself Googling a lot after because I was curious. And we were very close to my friend and I think we went through the Broadway lottery. And it was I think we were like third, fourth row. So we got to see a lot, but overall, I wasn't blown away like I have been with some other shows. I wasn't really impressed. Well, I was impressed by just, I think, the talent on the stage, all like good voices, but for me, it didn't really evoke any emotion in me. I was just like, this is cute. Okay, we get to learn about American history. I know for a lot of people, they didn't like the show for one reason or another. I try to see it from like a historical side. All right, this is our history. This is what us as American women had to go through to get to this point. But I think it could have been done without it being a musical, personally. So give it a try if you're in Manhattan and you want to see something that tells the tale of how we were able to learn how, well, gain some rights over the past couple decades, how the 19th Amendment came to be, how a group of women came together and were able to challenge a president. This is definitely a good example of that as a Broadway performance. But yeah, definitely not my favorite. It was fine. It was okay overall.
Mhm.
Based on your final kind of evaluation, the first thought I had in my head is, man, Hillary Clinton just can't win. Like, because like you're talking about how she was a producer and yet the show's closing already. Like, damn, dude, like
Well, you
what's
never know with certain shows like how they're going to perform when they hit. And is this going to be a long-term show? Is this going to be a Book of Mormon, Hamilton, Moulin Rouge? Or is
Wicked.
this going to be something that, gets a 6-month run and ta-ta, bye-bye?
Yeah.
Like you weren't that popular and we're not making enough money and
I,
therefore bye.
I was just talking to my son about that today because I guess like just yesterday, Lin-Manuel Miranda released a new concept album for a new show.
Okay.
And it's based on the movie The Warriors, but they gender flipped it. It's all female characters instead of male characters. And uh it's a concept album, right? And so my son was like, well, cool, well, are they going to make it? And I'm like, well, think about concept albums, and it doesn't matter who makes them, right? This is Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is Broadway gold right now, right?
Totally.
Like you feel like everything he touches turns to gold. But there was a time when there was a guy named Frank Wildhorn who was making stuff that everybody loved. He did Jekyll and Hyde and Scarlet Pimpernel, and he was cranking stuff out, and it sounded like he was solid gold. He put out a concept album for a play about the Civil War that sounded great, never got made. He worked on other stuff that didn't get made. He did, Jekyll and Hyde. He did Dracula the musical that didn't quite land. Like all these people, like it doesn't necessarily matter who you are. You still have to put all this stuff together and then sell it to somebody that's going to hear it and say, "Cool, I can put this on stage. I can make these sets. I can make this work in this
Right.
compact space." Like there is more to a musical than just the music of the musical.
Totally.
And something like a concept album sometimes omits the book altogether. Like they're just like, we made these songs based on this thing. Now we're going to bring somebody in that has to write the dialogue in between these musical numbers, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, you can have a great idea and maybe it's not going to get made, or maybe it gets to the point where it gets made and then it goes on stage and either a change from that concept album or something else didn't click in there, or you got the wrong cast, or X, Y, and Z. Like Broadway is a hard place to make it, and it's really hard to make it long term.
Right.
So, like, if you make a play that hits Broadway and runs for 6 months, technically you won. Like you did great. Most people don't get that far,
Sure.
right? It's hard to remember that. It's like if you play sports your whole life, you make a major, a professional team for one season and you don't start and then your career is over. It's hard to remind yourself that you made it farther than everybody else,
What
right?
also
Like
helped
it's
though that they had the backing of Hillary Clinton and Malala. If they didn't have that
yeah.
back, who knows if this story would have actually hit
Yeah,
Broadway.
if it would
Had
even
the
made it,
right
yeah.
people involved in order for something to actually hit that stage. So, and I guess it did well enough off Broadway where they're like, all right, let's give this a
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're in a presidential, election year, I mean, it was perfect timing to release this.
Yeah. And that probably, to be fair, probably wasn't an accident.
It
They
definitely
probably,
wasn't
yeah.
by accident. No
Yeah.
chance. Like she wrote this and well, at least off Broadway was in 2020. I mean, who knows? This probably was brewing in Shayna's mind as like, the 2020 election came about and she's like, all right, I need to make something somewhat controversial, but not, and something all female cast and something that's witty and empowers people. And this was definitely it in that sense. Um, yeah, the stories are cool. Like it's a cool story. I got to like delve into, Wikipedia world and learn a little bit more about each of these women because I didn't know who Alice Paul was. I
Yeah,
don't remember her in the textbooks in, high school.
makes me think of like that movie Hidden Figures, which was all about the women behind the space program, which
Yep. Behind
nobody
it.
teaches you about in school. Like
No,
that's the other thing too. Like if these stories don't get made in a format that's entertaining for the right to get out there into the masses, we'd never hear about these people. Like so,
correct.
yeah, Hidden Figures is a story that most people had no idea about.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah. And that
so
was a great
yeah,
film.
yeah,
But again, not a musical. You got to
true.
know when to make things musicals and not to make musicals.
Yep.
Hint, director of Joker 2,
Todd Phillips.
Todd Phillips.
And musicals are hard too because this is obviously a dramatic musical, right? Like it's not all dance and fun, but you still have to find a way to make, like you said, have that at least that one song that people walk out and can't stop singing when the show's over, right? Like
And they
that's what
did
makes
that for
musicals great.
Six the Musical because that's a history show, musical that they used and created this genius concept to have all six of his wives in each song. Like there are, I think, 8 songs in the entire, maybe 9 songs in the entire show. It's short, but they each explain their story and their relationship with Henry VIII in their own song. And you feel like you're at a pop concert. It's
Hmm.
so cool. This wasn't it. This was just, I mean, even the lyrics, it's nothing exciting. So, yeah.
Yeah,
But
my guess is that Hillary wanted to push this story or have this story told, which is fine. I mean, it sounds like a story that deserved to be told.
it should have.
Um, and her clout got it done, but it didn't necessarily get it done with the best possible people.
Yeah. Again, should have just been a play. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with making a play on Broadway. And I think one of my main like concerns, and when I have friends visiting outside of New York, they'll be like, I have to have the New York experience. I need to see a musical. And they think of all, like, I want to see Chicago because that's the classic show, and Chicago's great. I
Hmm.
encourage anyone to see Chicago, right? But there's also some really good plays out there. I mean, Kevin, you and I spoke about The Roommate, which
Yeah,
was a comedy, and that was with Mia Farrow and Patty
Patty
LuPone. That
LuPone. Yeah.
was that was so good. And then I saw Job a few months ago, and that was great too. And that was like a psychological thriller
Hmm.
is like drama on the stage. And I think nothing's wrong with having, some serious representation on Broadway. Not everything has to be like, I think of like old time Broadway, like Chicago and doing, or like cabaret, or just everyone dancing and having these high pitched bands and musical numbers that you associate with Broadway from like the 1920s, 30s, 40s. Broadway is a spectrum now
Yeah,
in
for
terms of
sure.
just what they put on a stage.
So speaking of like shows that didn't last long, so one of the things that I saw in 2019,
Okay.
which was the year I almost left New York, so I was seeing everything, was King Kong. That opened at the Broadway Theater of all places, Broadway Theater,
Okay.
on October 2018. And I went and saw it in July of 2019 because it was closing in August 2019.
So you had to see it.
It
Yeah.
did do 100, wait, yeah, I did like 320 regular performances, 29 previews. Yeah, so I mean, it was a decent run, and I actually liked it because the big animatronic Kong, like
That's
on
cool.
the stage, was crazy, and then seeing even the ship, like I thought the production was great, but
Yeah,
yeah, apparently Kong was not resonating
yeah.
with
Well,
audiences,
that's
but I
like
liked it.
Titanic the musical, which is actually a really great show. I love it. They literally have the stage on hydraulics. So the whole first act is before the iceberg. They hit the iceberg, they take the break. You come back, and as the show goes, the the stage tilts and tilts and tilts and tilts and tilts. And I mean, it's a great show. Like it really is a solid show, but I mean, it is a spectacle at the same time. Like it's all about this, event and all that. But yeah, production value is the thing. Like you got to do that. I mean, we can't all be Spider-Man the musical.
It's so
Um,
funny you say that. Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. My boss at the time was actually there at the preview where the dude fell. So apparently, like at the preview, yeah, at the preview, the dude like swings and there's an accident and he falls and he's not moving. And people were like, is this part of the show? And it's like, but then about 5 minutes in, they're like, yeah, no, he's not. This is so they had to actually stop the show and people went home. So that production was cursed.
Hurst, yep.
Poor guy, man. I should read up about it, but apparently that's a terrible fall to
Yeah,
happen.
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, that and then yeah, Superman the musical. Like there's been some musicals that tried to get made that
What is this
did not
Superman
work.
the musical? I heard about Spider-Man. It's they're like
Yeah.
they're grasping at straws. They're like, huh,
Oh yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
cool. Let's just make a musical out of this because, huh.
I
It's like
want
how
to
I
I
feel
want to
about
say
Mean Girls.
Superman was
Ridiculous.
after the Chris Reeve movies, after the Christopher Reeve movies. Like I think it was in the 80s because they tried to use the same tagline. They're like, "You'll believe a man can fly," right? Like that was their thing, and they're like, "Oh wait, but it sucks." So
Yeah,
like
they
it
need to go back to the drawing board because it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, I'm curious how like Devil Wears Prada is going to be when it eventually comes to Broadway here, but they're doing a show. It comes out in early 2025, Betty Boop the musical. I mean, okay, like random as hell, but we'll see how that goes. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I like I mean, I say I like my original ideas, but two of my favorite musicals are Jekyll and Hyde and Ragtime, and I love Scarlet Pimpernel. And you know what?
Mhm.
Ragtime's based on a book. Scarlet Pimpernel's based on a book.
Yeah,
Jekyll and Hyde's based on a book. So like these are, not always original stories.
sure.
Hamilton feels original, but he got the idea when he was stuck in an airport. He bought a book about Hamilton at the airport.
Just crazy. He made
Yeah, and
this
he was like,
biography
yeah,
into
and he was like, "This dude's dope. I need to write this musical now." Because what did he call him? He called him America's First Hustler. Like that
yeah.
was his deal. Like he read it and he was like, this guy kicked ass. And so like, yeah, you just have to get that right inspiration. But you have to. Part of it too is you have to believe in what you're writing. Like you have to be passionate about it, and that's probably maybe what was missing about the one that you just saw is that the story's there. Like the story's good, but when it comes to the people doing the extra doing the music and all that stuff, they just didn't quite have the same passion about it. They were doing it as a job and not as a love.
Yeah, and the songs are just so literal. It was like, we vote. It's like, no shit, we vote. Like, what is this?
So
Garbage.
potentially controversial, and it's musical related, but it's kind of a flip, and that is any thoughts on Wicked as the film? Because I did see a headline where I can never say her name, so I'm not even going to try, but
Cynthia Revo.
thank you. A headline where she's like, "Oh my God, like how dare they?" Because apparently the original
Poster.
poster shows her whole
Yeah.
face, but some fans went ahead and made it like, the original poster where you only see like her
That
smile. And she's like, "They're trying to erase me." And yo, I normally I don't care about this stuff, but now I'm like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? Like if I was like a producer of the movie, I'd be like, what the hell? Like you were just making negativity and shut the hell up. Now, too late. I've got Facebook friends who are going to disagree with me on this, but I think she's tripping. And I think that at the end of the day, the fans are just making it like the original poster. You're reading into this. And frankly, like, I think that with these, I'm gonna calm down because there's more I could say, but I'm just gonna leave it alone for right now because again, I don't really have a bone in this race or whatever, dog in this race. So, but I will say though, at and I think you'll smell what I'm cooking here. Like between the Snow White situation, as far as like her causing kind of controversy around the movie, and now with Cynthia, same thing. It's like, what are you doing? Like let's just have a damn good movie and keep it moving. So all that said, now both of you guys are way more invested in Defying Gravity than I ever will be, even though I like the movie. I mean, the show but I didn't pay for it. It was whatever. So yeah, what do you think? Is this movie going to be good? Is it going to suck? For the record, you didn't ask me. I totally thought Joker 2 was going to suck the whole time. I had no faith in it, so none of it surprised me. This movie, I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if I buy, uh, pop singer as Glenda and Cynthia as, you know, the role that was immortalized by Frozen Woman. So
I will say I was not can't speak to Cynthia Erivo because I think I've only seen her in one film, so I don't know her like her work too well. I was shocked that Ariana Grande was casted as Glinda. I'll be
I
honest with
was
you.
not.
You were not. Why?
She is very close with Kristen Chenoweth. She
Okay.
reveres Kristen Chenoweth, and so I think Kristen Chenoweth being the one that originated the role, she looked to her a lot in taking this role on. And I think number one, it's really easy to look at Ariana Grande and say, "Oh, she's just a pop star or whatever," but the girl
Sure.
can sing. Like
She
she
totally can.
is
She's
an
incredibly
amazing
talented and
singer.
more than just when it comes to her vocals. No
Yeah,
question. I watched her host SNL last week and I was just like, this girl is
yeah.
funny. She's incredibly talented. Andrew, I sent you a text of, I think I sent you too, Kevin. She does such a good impression of Jennifer Coolidge. It's
Hmm.
hysterical.
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, she really is funny. Cynthia Erivo, I don't know. Like, I don't know how good she is.
Right.
I think number one, you're not going to match Idina Menzel. Like,
No.
I just don't see where you're going
That's
to do that. But at the same time, like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. I know people are going to be looking for that, but the person that does those high poppy parts is going to be Ariana Grande anyways. Like,
Yeah.
The the other character, not Glenda, what's her name?
Alphaba?
Elphaba. She, she's like the heart and soul, but she's a little deeper. She's got a little more tone to her. Like
Sure.
so you can get away with it not being Idina Menzel. I don't think number one, I don't think this is going to hurt the publicity for the show at all.
No.
I think
I
people
already
that
bought
want
my
to see this,
tickets
yeah,
for November 26th,
yeah,
if
yeah,
that
I think it
I'm
was,
ready to go. I'm excited.
but I think it was the hottest selling pre-sale of the year. Like it's ready to go. So I mean,
Oh yeah.
whatever controversy comes out of it, I think this is just going to disappear anyways. But I think whatever controversy came out of this is has no
publicity.
impact at all. I think I think she feels slighted as part of it probably is, yeah, I'm a black woman. You didn't touch the white woman on the poster. You took my whole face off of the poster. And I
Well,
get
they
what the
moved her
fan art was.
profile a little bit. They
Yeah.
cut part of her face off. I get like it's definitely showing more of her face, but like you
Yeah.
explained it, Andrew, it was to emulate the
Yeah.
original show.
I
It's not a fuck you, Cynthia. We're gonna do this to you
yeah.
because of you. No, it's to emulate
They even
what
changed the lipstick from green to red. Like,
Yep.
stop it.
Yeah,
right,
Stop
I
being
think it's a person being hurt, which is okay.
right.
She worked on this, and she worked with people to
I
design this
agree.
poster. Like, this poster was made. I do also think she is overreacting, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, she is allowed to be a little
Mhm.
upset because, I mean, if she came out and just said, "Yo, that was my face on this poster," and I feel like you took my face off of the poster, and she left it without the rage, people would have been like, "Yeah, I get that."
This is the most
You could,
hateful, ugliest thing that's ever happened I've ever seen.
yeah,
Really?
yeah. I
So,
was like,
like, this is worse than someone's arm getting chopped off in fucking Darfur? Really?
yeah, it's not
Get
like
over
they
yourself.
whitewashed her. That they didn't do,
Right.
it could, it certainly could have been worse. And I do think her reaction was too strong.
It was
I get
extreme.
where she's coming from. I do get where she's coming from, but it's hard to see that when you come in that hot over a poster that was just graphically altered by somebody that literally, it's not like this was done out of thin air.
No,
Like, it was literally done to match the other poster, even like you
correct.
said, to the point of the colors. They made the lipstick the same, whatever. So again, I get being upset. That was your face on your poster. That was your moment. And someone, took that away a little bit. So sure, that sucks. That's a
But it's
bummer,
also one of many posters. There's different posters out there for this film. It's
Yeah.
just one that came out. I don't know.
Yeah. It's
But
like I said, I get where she's coming from. I just think she came in too hot.
but you guys both think as fans, well, certainly you already have your ticket, Lauren. So Kev, like, are
Bought it
you?
today, and I'm still planning to see it despite the
Yeah.
controversy of the poster.
So based on the trailers you've seen, you are confident this movie's going to be good.
Yes.
Yes,
This is
100%.
the type of
100%.
musical that you want to be on film. There's so many musicals that I'm like, should you do that? This is where they can let their creativity literally fly,
Yeah. And I think
right?
I'm
too, like
happy.
it is such a cool story. Like it is such a cool take on the characters,
It really is.
and what it does for the original movie.
Hmm.
Um, it's actually it's a special show. Like I saw this is the only show I've seen on Broadway to date. And I saw it with my daughter. If my daughter and she was going to come out, I don't know if she's still going to come out, but if she does, I would go see this in the theater with her again. Like I think it, um, I think it's going to be really good, and I think it's going to be well done.
Right.
It's going to be well respected. It is interesting that they're making it into two films, which tells me they might be adding a little bit. Um, which is okay as long as it's done. They did that with the Lion King. They added a bunch of stuff to that, and that musical is great. Um, but yeah, as long as it's done respectfully, I think it's going to be great. And visually, it's going to be incredible. You
It's gonna
have the
be
access
amazing
to
visually.
yeah, you have
It's
access to
yeah,
special effects granted, they do a great job on stage because
right,
stage special effects always blow me away. If you can, the things they can do on stage, sometimes I'm just like, that's cool. That's just, I mean, that's magic, like what you just did,
right.
right? And so, to have access to all the film, CGI and graphics and all that stuff, yeah, it's going to be good. And I ultimately think this is going to have zero impact. So,
Totally. It's
yeah.
gonna be, yeah. I think this is gonna be like the holiday film of the year. It just gives that sort of
Mhm.
like how I know people didn't like it. Hot take, I liked Willy Wonka or Wonka that came out. I enjoyed it, but it gives you that magic of the holiday season. This is gonna be the magic of 2024, no question.
Well, I think Wonka is one of those films that comes down to the advertising again. I didn't know it was a musical. Like I did not know it was a musical until somebody told me it was a musical after it had
Yeah.
already come out, and I was like, I don't if I don't feel like you can like hide that and then have people come to the theater and be happy because you're trying to draw them in so they didn't know it was a musical because maybe they don't like musicals.
Again, Joker number
Like
two.
right,
Um,
like
you
yeah, it's
love it.
just if your show is a musical, just like they did that with Mean Girls.
Advertise it. Yeah.
Yeah, like Mean Girls, they're like, yeah, we're gonna do the new Mean Girls movie. They're like, oh yeah, it's also a musical. And you're like, what? Like, why didn't you just say that? Like their
Yeah.
advertising was terrible for that. And I just don't think I don't
Yeah.
think it's fair to the movie because you made this
Misrepresent
movie in
it.
this way. And then it's not fair to the audience who thinks they're gonna go see, film A and they get film B instead. Like
Yeah.
it's weird. Like I've got lots of
I
problems with
didn't think
advertising over the last
Wonka
two
was as
years.
much of a musical though. I know there was definitely more music in it. There was music in the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought Timothy Chalamet did a great job and I loved learning about again, it's an origin story. How did Wonka become, and
Hmm.
maybe that's just me who enjoys a good origin story. How did he become who he is today? How did he become the master chocolatier,
Yeah.
entrepreneur that we know him to be from previous films?
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, I actually still haven't watched it, but I'm curious about it. I would watch it. I just haven't had the opportunity to. I think it's on HBO or something.
Yeah. It's
Um,
magical in its own way, and
yeah,
it's
it
one of
looked
those
fun.
end of year films that you just want to see, and it gives you a lot of, I don't know, it just brings a smile to my face to see the colors and the visual effects on the screen. Sort of like we talked about Avatar, the second film that came
Yeah,
out last year. I finally watched it a couple of weeks ago, and it really brought a smile to my face, and it's so beautiful to watch on screen. So don't see Suffs
Bring
unless
it
you
home.
don't see it.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to close the show real quick with the thing that's been behind me the whole time. To be fair, it's only a few episodes in. So on Peacock, there's a show called Teacup, which is a strange name for a show that is actually a horror themed series. It stars Yvonne Strahovski of Handmaid's Tale and Chuck fame. She's really great in it. Um, The rest of the actors I kind of recognize, but I don't know by name. Um, but they're all solid. But the gist of this story, it kind of opens up, and you've got this couple. You've got Yvonne Strahovski and her husband, and you can tell that there is some kind of estrangement going on in their particular relationship. Like they are on the outs, on the verge of divorce, maybe even actually talking about it. And what we come to find out as these episodes go on is that he had an affair. Well, what happens in the first episode is this dude shows up in a gas mask, like this guy back here, and he spray paints a line around their property, this big circle. And after some weird stuff happens, like their power goes out and they can't start their cars, like no, there's no cell phone signals, everything stops working. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're starting to walk. They see this dude at their property line, and he's out there in his car, and his car is running. So they go up to him to try and get him to help. He's got the gas mask on. He won't say anything, but he holds up a sign and says, "Don't cross the line." And there's this blue spray painted line. And of course, they're like, "Dude, what are you talking about? What do you know? Whatever." So they try to kind of aggressively approach him. He pulls out a gun. They don't have anything, so like, okay, okay, okay. As this happens, a wolf or a coyote comes out of the woods, and starts running at them and attacks one of the guys. And he flips it off. And when he flips it off of himself, it gets tossed past this line this dude has painted on the ground. And in the first like true like horror moment of the show, this dog starts to like literally like break down and die, like physically break down and die right in front of them, like almost instantly. And so now we've established that this line, for as bullshit as it is that this dude spray painted this line, everybody within this now cannot leave. Even though this guy's on the outside, he's fine. He also has a gas mask on, which says maybe there's some toxic something out there. But we don't know why. We don't know what the differentiator is. We just know that this line is there. Um, Now, as we go on, we start to build the interpersonal drama. What we find out is that in the first episode, right before this line was established, this neighbor brought their horse in. So Yvonne Strahovski's character is a veterinarian, like a large animal veterinarian. They brought their horse in because the horse was acting weird. Well, the couple that brought the horse in, as it turns out, the wife is the one that the Yvonne Strahovski's husband had the affair with. So as soon as this line's painted, now they're all stuck on this property together. And so that's going to be a drama. She has a little boy that um experienced something in the first episode to where he's kind of having some visions or something, like he has at least a limited understanding of what's going on and that there is a bad guy out there. Um, and that's really all there is going on in this first couple of episodes. It's solid. The acting is really good. It is definitely a character drama with horror elements, right? Like it's not terrifying the whole way through. But the things that happen are definitely like ramped up past something you would see on regular network television. Like when that dog breaks down, there's a scene where a person does leave crosses the line on the property. It's pretty brutal. Like it's not, sweet and innocent. So it's interesting, and like I said, it's well made, it's well acted. So I'm really curious to see it continue on. I don't have a lot more to review on it other than, everybody's doing a good job. I like Yvonne Strahovski. I think she's come a long way since Chuck, where she was, she was the hot girl in Chuck, and she was there to be, your sexy character, right? Like she wore small outfits, like she was there. Chuck was a different show at the time. And then to see her go to The Handmaid's Tale, where she's very much a dramatic character, and I think she grew a lot in that show. And then now she's again playing a very dramatic character. So I think it's a good run for her right now. So she may not make a whole lot of TV shows and movies after this. Like I don't think she'll ever be a movie star. Like for whatever reason, she doesn't have that in her belt, and I don't know why that is. She's talented, she's pretty, and all that, But I don't think she'll ever be like a headliner in a movie. But it's good to see her breaking out, and the other characters in this are solid. They're all, again, there's the husband of the woman that had the affair with her husband. I've seen him before. I couldn't tell you his name. The husband, I've seen him before. Couldn't tell you his name. Um, I think the older lady is her mom. Might be his mom, but I think it's her mom. No, it's his mom. But she's another actress that you've seen before. Like, she's been around, but I couldn't name her. Um, but so, yeah, like they're all really really solid. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I think it's a short run, 8 episode thing. I kind of hope it's a standalone thing where it's just one season. But we'll see. Where it's at right now, it could easily be a multi-season thing. The only problem with shows like this where you have this centralized mystery is at the end of the first season, you have to give something that feels like an answer, and then you have to continue to build on that in a way that doesn't feel like you're just grasping at straws after that. Like I talked about the show From, which is oddly a similar kind of premise. These people are all trapped in this town, they can't leave, there's monsters in this town. And that show is incredible. Like, I think that show is worth getting a trial of MGM Plus when the season ends, if you're not, if you don't already have MGM Plus. If that one also is definitely a horror series. Like, there are some gruesome things that happen in that show, and it's scary in parts and stuff like that. But it's the best work from Harold Perrineau since probably Oz, and he's great in it. But Teacup is so far is worth a watch. I don't know that it's going to be great. I haven't seen what it's rated on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, but I'll throw it up in the background and let you know. But it was decent. Like, it's good so far. So I'm going to keep watching it and hopefully get to the end of that. And I'm just hoping that whatever they do with it is satisfying. All right. Well, you guys have anything else? I know we've been going for a little bit now.
Nah, I think this is one of the longer episodes we've done lately.
Yeah. So, it's 2 hours. I think it'll end up, after editing, probably come in at like $1.45 and be pretty good. But yeah, I think it was a good one. So, all right then. Well, with that, then I will say to everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.